Okay, seriously, what the is happening with Corsair? I used to get excited about their new case releases, but not anymore. Now I'm looking out to see how they're gonna screw over customers, introducing some stupid features, being really out of touch with pricing, and the Corsair 4000D was announced about like 4 years ago, and this is the last Corsair case that I considered worthy because of its excellent starting price of $79. Although now it's over $100, which is absurd, but still it has a pretty decent interior, great airflow, and everything I really wanted from a mid-tower with really solid design consistency. But everything else that has landed in the studio since has been a disappointment one way or another. This case has housed my main system for the last 3 years. I was excited to see what Corsair has in the market in the ATX game that I could potentially use to upgrade. And when I received the dual chamber 6500, I was shocked. I was like, no way, Jose. It lacks focus, it has terrible attention to detail. I mean, super questionable build quality all around. The only good thing the 6500 does is highlight how out of touch Corsair is with their case design and how the competition has such a strong leg up on Corsair in terms of feature sets, in terms of price points, in terms of build quality, flexibility for hardware. I seriously think Corsair needs to rethink their strategy for case design moving forward and how they should really fix their cases, please. Now, just because something is heavy doesn't mean the build quality is good. Like, these exterior armor plates are insanely thick and heavy, and they give the perception of the case to be extremely solid, and that's the first sort of perception you get with the 6500, the 2500. My first impression of that case was like, wow, this is really good. But once you remove all these panels, the actual metal shell is nothing special. So removing the front glass piece over here to reveal unexposed corner structure, there is a bit of flex here, so that's not really an issue. What I have a problem with is the door. First, the screw that holds the door in place that you are supposed to be able to remove in order to take off the side panel has stripped inside its own mount, therefore the door is stuck. Nope, this isn't going anywhere. The glass panel is actually quite heavy, so I have to lift it in order for it to fit inside its own little peg mount. Otherwise, the frame over here and at the top also, they don't align. So you have to really play with it to get it to fit. And this frame support at the back is flexing a little bit too much for my comfort. I think I found out the reason why the glass panel is so misaligned. Look how bendy and flexible this metal is. Not cool, man. All the other exterior panels are bending way too much for my comfort, even though they're sort of designed for that because of their mount. It's just, this is a big red flag. I have just taken off the rear side panel. Like, this is brand new and it's already warped. $200, huh? I guess you've depleted all your metal budget for the armor on the exterior instead of putting it in places that you would actually interact with. I have never seen such a loose dust filter in my 12 years or so of reviewing cases. And if it does pop out, good luck trying to push it back in. How the f... What I find more strange is that when you look at the bottom, you can actually remove the thin piece and the big piece right over here that don't really do anything at the bottom, aside from adding weight and cost to Corsair. And then we get revealed our standard case feed that otherwise would have been here by default. You can see they're just screwed in and they're plastic, and this is probably what was in the case development by default until they decided to add a little bit more price and perhaps rigidity to an otherwise pretty mediocre frame. I think they found all the ways to save on cost, like these tiny thumb screws that you cannot actually use with your thumbs because they're so little. And also, look at this. Look how much flexibility there is for the back. And the PCI slots are actually already bowed for some reason out of the factory. I mentioned all these build quality issues, and yet we find something like this. Normally, these quick release plastic clips would be just simply attached into the frame with their own little plastic clips, but every single quick release point on this enclosure is screwed in. So they will not fall out, they will not break, and over time, you know, you can still remove the panels without any worry about these quick release plates breaking, and that's impressive. You know what else is impressive that actually blends a good amount of performance and price? This case from Montech.
When elegance meets value, Montech's Sky 2 GX cases ensures your components can breathe properly with its innovative mesh front panel design that's easy to access. The included premium AX140 ARGB fans provide a sleek aesthetic boost, expand to eATX, load up to 11 fans, enjoy vertical GP mounting, and level up your cooling game with support for up to 360mm radiators, and stay connected with a plethora of USB ports, including a fast USB-C port. The elegant airflow focus case has evolved. Check out the new Sky 2 GX down below.
There's also a surprising amount of lack of attention to detail. So these two screws that hold the glass panel in place are black. Why are they black? They've ruined an otherwise really clean aesthetic from the side, and they pop out like this should be white or hidden somehow. And also, if we open this up, the interior of the glass over here is gray. It should be white because otherwise these parts are still visible from the interior. Here's a perfect example. This gray is visible and there's no other similar gray color on the interior or the exterior. So this whole design is very inconsistent. I do appreciate though that the glass is very clear. It's not tinted. Perhaps there's like a tiny bit of a bluish hint. But my problem is actually with the rubber grommets. You can see just how mismatched the color of the exterior of the rubber to the metal motherboard tray, for example. It's weird though, because the interior pieces, the ones that are going to be passing through, they match the metal perfectly, but the exterior doesn't. And so there's a bit of a purplish, dirty hue that I'm not a huge fan of. Normally, I would not say anything about it, but we have 4 of these rubber grommets on this side of the motherboard tray that is exactly visible from this angle of the enclosure. So that's a huge miss. All right, so which designer thought this was a good idea? You cannot install the hard drive cage when the power supply is already inserted, because we have these 2 tabs that you have to angle in order for them to insert into the frame. And with the power supply in place, you can't angle it enough for those 2 tabs to fit inside the frame. Dumb. Imagine needing to remove a power supply in order to access the hard drive cage, which you cannot even remove with the power supply in place. So you have to remove this entire thing in the back to remove the hard drive cage. I mean, this whole back section is so clearly an afterthought because the hard drive cage is actually in the way for your EPS power for the backward facing connectors. Stupid. Unfortunately, the top or the bottom are not removable for easy fan installation. So the top I can forget, but the bottom, this is a huge pain. If you want to install a few fans, you have to lift the case, make sure that you screw everything properly. And yeah, this is not an easy access. The only removable bracket is the side one. The good thing is that this bracket is removable with a single screw at the top, which is nice. But you can unfortunately accidentally install it backwards, and you can still put it in and you can screw it in, no problem. It's just the side panel will not close, and they did not do anything on the frame level to not allow you to install it backwards instead. Now looking over here, there's clearly room for 140mm fans if only they made mounting locations for them or made the bracket slightly wider, but they didn't because this is an artificial compromise. So you guys remember the side panel, right? With that really loose dust filter. Well, installing it back in here, we do have this plastic channel that does not allow the filter to be sucked into the fans. And I'm sure that is the reason why 140mm fans cannot be installed here. Here's a better view on where this plastic shroud would sit. And you can clearly see it does cover, or it will cover 140mm fan mounts as well. It's just that this bracket doesn't accommodate it. Now for the sake of design, Corsair for some reason decided not to offset this top fan mount closer to the side panel as they've always done. And here instead, now we have less room on the interior for just less clearance with thick set of fans and radiators. Come on, man. You can see, right, how little room we have above the motherboard with our D30 AIO installed with 30mm thick fans. You cannot do push and pull because that would interact with our motherboard components already. You cannot pre-route your 8-pin EPS power with a radiator installed at the top. You have to do that separately. I mean, if there's so much emphasis on trying to utilize this bottom intake potentially to offset some of the cooling misconfiguration that you might have at the top, why make this metal mesh so restrictive? Like, it doesn't need to be this closed off for a bottom intake. And when it comes to cable management, I mean, this is a joke. My Corsair 4000D does a better job at guiding cables than this. There are a few cable tie points in here, but that's it. For a $200 enclosure, you have to buy a DLC for plastic cable channels that should have been included by default. I also feel like the power supply mount should have been slightly closer to the side panel to give us a little bit of extra clearance behind it. So if you want to route certain cables behind it, that would have been possible without needing to remove the power supply first. Now, with all the shortcomings of the 6500, I am honestly shocked it launched this way, just because it has so much extra built-in potential, but clearly for the future revisions. And even though it has BTF support, it does not support my Aorus Stealth motherboard because of the 24-pin connector that is going sideways. It does not simply fit into this case, so you have to use ASUS BTF motherboards or the Project Stealth from MSI, but nothing from Aorus. Now, for Corsair to release such a dud, it's weird because they were one of the first ones to launch a dual-chamber enclosure that was very popular, the Air 540, I believe that was called. So way before the O11 came out and took the market by storm, and where all the manufacturers are now trying to catch up to that stature. Now, of course, specs is one thing, but comparing this thing to the latest O11D Evo RGB, I mean, there's no comparison. The Lian Li is hands down better in every single aspect in terms of hardware compatibility, more options for configurations, better build quality, and it feels like there's focus. So you can still do a lot of different things in the dual chamber configuration, but at least the rear chamber is designed with purpose, unlike it's not with the 6500. It's a mess. Now the thing is, I don't want to crap all over Corsair because I love their desks, I love their new K75 keyboard, although I hate their naming schemes that don't align with the actual size of the keyboard. Their monitors are good, but the cases, man, they're really losing touch with reality, and the 6500 is the perfect example of that. And I really hope this message resonates with Corsair and potentially what you guys are experiencing as well, because I really want them to improve and give us better products and not something that will just fly under the radar as so unfinished. I'm Dimitri, thanks so much for watching, I'll talk to you in the next video.